Nice to meet you, Mr. Goethals. I'm Iye from Shanghai Media Group. Thank you very much for talking to us. Do you come to China often? When did you first come to China?
Well, first time I came to China was, I think, in 1978. So I've seen China changing, and I would say in a very positive way. People should really realize, I would say, the achievements of China on such a short period. In fact, it's just a little bit more than 40 years. China, before it started with manufacturing, I would say, products with little value added. And in this way, of course, I think it's we see and we observe that China in the meantime has, I think, developed its technological know-how, and I would say in a very positive way. So now you become, in fact, it's not only, I would say, manufacturing cheap labor products, but now you're also even able to have more technological manufacturing and even high-tech manufacturing. And I think China is also achieving that development in a very fast way. And I think in Europe, the people are still not, still have a perception of China 5 or 10 or even 20 years ago. And I think China today is not the same country anymore as 5 years ago.
Yes.
But the perceptions and the stereotypes in which Europe and the mainstream public, the general public, is still thinking about China is in fact quite outdated. In fact, and that's also, I would say, a main problem in Europe, that people don't realize the speed in which China and China economy is developing. And I think that creates, I would say, tendencies for fear that suddenly, instead of China just being a manufacturer of cheaper products, becomes a competitor.
Recently, EU imposed additional tariffs on Chinese EVs. Some EU members expressed their disapproval. So what do you think of this tariff? Will it hurt China-EU trade ties?
I would say it's more like signaling to, I would say, to the other side that there is some mismatch somewhere. But I would say you don't have to blame always the other side. Sometimes it's about more your internal problems than it's the problem of the other side. People forget sometimes in Europe that there is a very strong and huge competition inside China between all the companies also and the manufacturers. It's a very tough, I would say, economic environment, very competitive. And also you see well, there is some people and some sectors would prefer to impose tariffs, but there is no new unanimity in Europe even about that. And also even within the industrial sectors, there is no unanimity. And of course, if you impose sanctions or tariffs, you will get also reciprocity. And then, yeah, okay, I think we have to be very careful with, I would say, this kind of approaches. So what are we talking about somewhere? You know, even if the prices, I would say, of the Chinese EV is increased, they still can be, I would say, competitive. And it's the same for the European cars also. You know, it's you must be very careful with this kind of framing.
What are the main challenges or barriers to further enhancing economic ties between China and Europe?
I think we have to look much more to a long-term perspective in the relationship between Europe and China, because otherwise we fall victim too much about short-term populistic and polarizing, I would say, political agendas. I think the main problem is that most people in Europe really don't know China.
Yes.
So, and there is a kind of political framing of China on the moment in Europe. It's not only related to Europe, but it's more globally related. And I think it would be very important also that China is doing some efforts to, to neutralize a negative, too much negative framing. There is really some work to be done on that. But that's also, again, it comes back to the, I would say, not enough peoples-to-peoples dialogue, not enough communication. So therefore, I think this forum also, the emphasis, the focus of this forum is, to have to discuss and to study and to talk about how we can increase and improve, again, peoples-to-peoples dialogue.
And actually, more and more Europeans have chance to visit China recently. At least in Shanghai, I can see many European tourists, and I can hear them speaking German and French, because China offers visa-free entry for more than 10 European countries, including Belgium. So how do you see this visa-free policy?
I think it's a very good move from the Chinese government to facilitate the visa applications, and in fact to even make a free visa travel possible for a number of European member states. I think this is a very positive, I would say, move and approach. So it will help a lot, I think, also to increase the interest of European people to travel to China and to discover China, because most people, of course, they only go to the main cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, but there is a lot of, China is nearly like a continent, while Europe also is like a continent, and so to make it easier to travel, I think that's already a big plus, to assist, the peoples-to-peoples dialogue. The best thing to help and have peoples-to-peoples dialogue, to have a better understanding of each other culture, is education, right? And to develop a better knowledge, understanding of each other cultures. In fact, sharing our values is, I think, very interesting and the best way, because we have very valuable values, both sides, and it would be interesting, in fact, to share those values. Europe and China are, in fact, very old civilizations, so it's, I think we can learn a lot still from each other.